Ethics. It is in actual fact a posh word for simply the way we conduct ourselves.
I think there are different ways by which we know when something is right or wrong. The Bible gives us certain absolutes. We know that adultery is wrong. We know that murder is wrong. There are some absolutes that we just know. But there are many other areas that are not so easy to be able to say absolutely, one way or the other, and that are just grey areas.
There are rights and wrongs, and sometimes there have to be absolute barriers, but it needs to be negotiated, and it has to be in a civic society that we have, and a civil society. Those boundaries have to be negotiated constantly and over time. And my right might be somebody else's wrong. And even as Christians, we don't always necessarily agree precisely on what right and wrong. And so we have to have the grace and the love to understand that somebody might have a different opinion and might take a different view on a particular issue. I think it's really difficult sometimes just to say absolutes, because it's never, especially in this particular role, it's never quite as clear as you ever thought it was when you sort of rush headlong into an issue. You realise there are so many different points of view, and many of them held legitimately.
And sometimes, because of the nature of the world that we live in, the reality is that both ways are wrong. Sometimes there is no right way. Sometimes both avenues that are open to us are wrong. And then we have to choose which avenue we think will cause the least amount of damage. And for me, then do that in a prayerful attitude, talking to God about it all the way.
The Bible plays obviously an important part in any Christian's life. I mean, obviously being the Word of God, giving us the framework in which we understand God's purposes for us, particularly the New Testament, being constantly challenged by the way that Jesus lived. I firmly believe that the challenge for us as Christians is to walk like Jesus.
There's something that's inbuilt, as I think it's called a conscience. And sometimes we just know that is not right.
If we use substances, for instance, that we know will damage not only our bodies but possibly our minds, then that goes contrary to what God has told us to do, but it also goes against common sense when we know that what we do will damage or even perhaps destroy us.
But in ordinary life, 99% of our decisions we have to make are about right and wrong, and we know it's not right, even though we do it anyway. We know we've lied, we know we've cheated, and we just know, and we are left with a sense of guilt, which we can either brush away and pretend isn't there anymore, or else we can make amends and say, actually, I'm sorry about